Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks so much for being here and getting your day started with us. We are going to begin this Wednesday morning with the results of primary contests held in 6 states across the country yesterday. The results continue to show the grip President Trump has on the Republican Party as it looks towards November's midterm elections. NBC News projects that former Navy SEAL Ed Gallrein has won the Republican primary in Kentucky's 4th congressional district. He defeated incumbent Congressman Thomas Massie in what was the most expensive House primary ever.
Gallrein is the latest candidate handpicked by Mr. Trump to win their primary. He kept a low profile during the campaign, choosing to let President Trump's endorsement speak for him. Gallrein was criticized by Massie for avoiding debates. Massie has clashed with the president over the Epstein files as well as the war with Iran. This race was another win for the president, who has made no secret of his desire to eliminate political rivals within his own party ahead of the midterms. Both candidates in Kentucky spoke out after the race was called.
I want to thank President Trump for his support, his endorsement, and his counsel as I navigated this campaign, which is a journey of unto itself, and for his courageous leadership of our nation at this critical time.
We stirred up something. There is a yearning in this country for somebody who will vote for principles over party.
There are several other races we are continuing to watch this morning. NBC News chief data analyst Steve Kornacki breaks down the biggest races from the big board.
All right, the headline of the night: President Trump asked Republican primary voters in Kentucky's 4th congressional district to throw out long-serving incumbent Congressman Tom Massie, and they did just that. Ed Gallrein, who was endorsed by President Trump, winning by 10 points over Massie, who'd served in the House since 2012. This continues a strong streak that the president's had this month in Republican primaries. Just over the weekend, of course, in Louisiana, he had opposed Senator Bill Cassidy, who was denied renomination in that primary. Now Massie goes down in Kentucky. Other headlines from the night: in Georgia, Senate race here. This is the Republican primary for the right to run against Democrat Jon Ossoff in a closely watched race this fall. This Republican primary will advance to a runoff here. You see Congressman Mike Collins in first place. Derek Dooley, endorsed by Governor Brian Kemp. He got a concession call from Buddy Carter heading into that runoff then with Mike Collins. In the governor's race on the Republican side in Georgia, it will also go to a runoff. Trump has backed Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. He will face Rick Jackson in a runoff there that'll take place next month. On the Democratic side, there will be no runoff. The former mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, she will be the Democratic nominee for governor of Georgia. In Alabama, this is the Senate seat being vacated by Tommy Tuberville. He's running for governor there. In the Republican primary here, a runoff looms, but first place, Barry Moore. He's the congressman endorsed by Donald Trump in that race. And a very momentous outcome here for the left in the Democratic Party in the 3rd congressional district of Pennsylvania. This is the city of Philadelphia. Chris Rabb, he's a self-described Democratic socialist, wins and wins big in this Democratic primary for Congress, defeating Sharif Street. He's the son of a former mayor. He's a state senator. Ayla Stanford finishing 3rd there. So a notable outcome as well on the Democratic side in Philadelphia.
All right, Steve, thank you. And later today, Steve will answer questions on NBCNews.com and our NBC News app.
That is so cool. Trust us, as people who get to ask him questions. It's awesome. Let's bring in NBC News political reporter Megan Leibowitz for more on these results and some other headlines from Washington for us. Megan, good morning. So let's start with this loss here for Representative Massie in the Kentucky primary. Tell us what it tells us about President Trump's influence on the GOP right now.
Hey guys, good morning. Yeah, this is just the latest example of President Trump using his political power in order to oust one of his Republican critics. So in the lead up to this race, President Trump had repeatedly been bashing Massie on social media and urging his supporters to go out and to vote for Gallrein, who had been handpicked by President Trump to primary Massie. Now, this is just the latest example of President Trump being able to flex his political power. Just days ago, we saw saw Senator Bill Cassidy lose his primary earlier just a couple of days ago, when President Trump had urged his supporters to go out and to back his challenger. Earlier this month as well, we saw a group of Republican state legislators in Indiana also lose their seats after President Trump had again urged his supporters to oust those lawmakers after they had not fallen in line with the president's demands to push forward redistricting efforts in that state. So, long story short here, this is really showing that the president has still a pretty strong grip on the president, on the party in terms of the direction that the party goes in the future. But remember, guys, the primaries are just one piece of the puzzle here. And now moving forward, all of these candidates are still going to have to go forward and face off against their Democratic rivals this November.
Yeah, we have another big headline, too, from yesterday. This is Texas. President Trump endorsed the Attorney General there, Ken Paxton, over the incumbent Republican Senator John Cornyn. That's ahead of their runoff, which is next week. What was the president's rationale? How is Cornyn responding to this?
Yeah, so the president talked about loyalty in his Truth Social post where he had endorsed Paxton, saying that he felt like he was getting enough of that loyalty from Paxton and not enough of it from Cornyn. So in that Truth Social post, one of the first things that he talked about was he said that Paxton was someone who has always been extremely loyal to me and the MAGA movement. And he also said that Cornyn's a good man, but that the longtime senator was not supportive of me when the times were tough. And you can see that Cornyn had responded to President Trump endorsing his rival, touting his work with President Trump, and also framing himself as the person who is best equipped to then take on the Democrat this November. He wrote that it is now time for Texas Republican voters to decide if they want a strong nominee to help our GOP candidates down ballot and defeat Tallarico in November, or a weak nominee who jeopardizes everything we care about. Now, looking forward, that runoff takes place next Tuesday, and whoever wins it is going to have to go up against Democrat James Tallarico.
Megan, we also do want to ask you here news related to the war in Iran. On Capitol Hill, the Senate voted yesterday to move forward with this resolution. It would force President Trump to end the war with Iran. But this is a real breakthrough for this Democratic-led effort. We've been seeing this for a while. One Republican senator who recently lost his state's primary flipped his vote this time around to get them there. Tell us about this and what happens next with this resolution.
Yeah, so this vote was really interesting because it was the first time that Senator Bill Cassidy had supported that measure. Remember, just days ago, he lost his primary after President Trump had urged supporters to back his opponent. So in his rationale for describing why he had decided to flip his vote and to vote in favor of this war powers resolution, Senator Cassidy had said that the White House and the Pentagon left Congress in the dark and said that until the administration provides clarity, no congressional authorization or extension can be justified. Now, the vote here was 50-47, with 3 Republican senators who had previously opposed the bill missing the vote. So moving forward, it still has to pass another vote in the Senate. And if those 3 Republicans still vote against the resolution, it'd be a 50-50 tie and it would fail. But if another Republican flips, it would ultimately move past the Senate. Even if it does move past the Senate, it would still face hurdles. It would still have to pass the Republican-controlled House, and it would ultimately likely face a veto from President Trump, guys.
All right, Megan, thanks so much.
We are continuing to learn more details about that so-called anti-weaponization fund announced by the Justice Department. The fund is worth nearly $1.8 billion. It's part of a settlement to a lawsuit brought against the government by President Trump over his leaked tax returns several years ago.
That money would be used to compensate Trump allies who feel they've been unjustly prosecuted by the federal government. That would give January 6 rioters pardoned by the president the ability to seek taxpayer-funded payouts. We're now learning that months before this fund was announced, a now former DOJ official told a Republican ally that big payouts were coming for January 6 defendants.
NBC News senior justice reporter Ryan Riley joins us once again this morning with more on his reporting. Ryan, good to have you with us. So that former DOJ official is Ed Martin. Now, he was, let me look through this here, he was stripped earlier this year of his role as head of the Justice Department's weaponization working group that targeted the president's political foes. Walk us through some more of your reporting here, what we're learning.
Yeah, he still is a pardon attorney, so he still has this role at the DOJ, but he was stripped of that weaponization role, so he still has influence. He's often seen at the White House and has photos of him posted there, but essentially, he's been one of the biggest advocates for January 6 rioters within the administration. That's actually really how he formed this relationship with Donald Trump. They were hosting fundraisers for these rioters on Donald Trump's property when he was out of office, and so that's how this relationship came about. And he's been advocating for this for a while now and really pushing the administration to give these payouts and reparations, as he's referred to them. And in this meeting, we had two sources who spotted him and heard this conversation that he had with a former Republican senator talking about these payouts. The payout that they were talking about at that point was $40 million. But of course, now we've expanded to $1.776 billion. So a real lot of money that is available potentially to January 6 rioters here.
Ryan, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche was grilled yesterday on Capitol Hill during a Senate subcommittee hearing about this. What did he say?
Yeah, he really did try to, I think, deflect a lot of the questions, particularly about individual rioters. But take a listen to what he had to say.
It is true that this is unusual. That is true. But it is not unprecedented. And it was done to address something that had never happened again either. So there is an unprecedented nature of what we did. Anybody in this country is eligible to apply if they believe they were a victim of weaponization.
So what the acting attorney general is referring to there with the comparator to previous cases is a much narrower set of circumstances. There was an instance where a fund was available to individuals, specifically Native American farmers, who had been discriminated against and had been rejected when they sought loans from the federal government. And so in 2010, there was this thing set up, and importantly, it was approved by a judge, which is not the case in this new fund, and that gave people who had applied in the 80s and 90s and had been rejected. So very specific qualifications for individuals here. The thing with this pot is there's really not many qualifications at all. They just sort of define these things as weaponization and say if you're a victim of weaponization, you can apply for this fund. So the rules aren't really spelled out at all. These 5 members of the commission are going to have to sort of make up a number of rules for who's able to apply.
Ryan, we're also learning that this IRS settlement stemming from the president's lawsuits over those leaked tax returns prohibits audits and investigations of the president, of his family, of his businesses. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, what's really fascinating about this is that it was sort of added on, right? This was usually when you reach a deal, here's the deal, both sides sign it. That was not the case here. They decided the day after, there was something we left out. It wasn't signed by the same officials. In fact, Todd Blanche signed off on this individual sort of side deal. And that has struck a lot of people as abnormal and unusual because, it's giving essentially the president a benefit. There have been estimates that it would cost, if the president's tax records were reevaluated, you're looking at a cost of upwards of $100 million. And so that is a material benefit in the view of a lot of critics that he is getting from this deal, even though he's not getting any individual payout through because of this sort of settlement that was reached before a court had a chance to issue it. But I think this is really all going to be under litigation. There's a lot of opponents who are going to try to find some sort of standing to oppose this taxpayer payout going to a lot of rioters, including really violent ones who assaulted law enforcement officers on January 6th.
All right, Ryan Riley, thanks for bringing us your exclusive reporting. Appreciate it.
We're learning new details about what sparked Monday's horrific shooting at that mosque in San Diego, which killed 3 men. Investigators are digging into the 2 teenage gunmen and their motives. The FBI says they found more than 30 guns and a crossbow during searches of homes connected to the suspects. Law enforcement officials also say they are trying to authenticate a document posted online that was apparently written by the suspects. The writings are filled with anti-Islamic and other hateful views. All this as the victims are being hailed by their community as heroes. NBC's Morgan Chesky has the latest from San Diego.
You can hear the gunshots. A person scrambling to push a stroller to safety as a suspect opens fire in a San Diego neighborhood. And here, glass breaking as more shots come from that very vehicle. Police say just minutes before that shooting, 2 gunmen unleashed a deadly rampage at a mosque, sending school kids running for their lives. Two senior law enforcement officials telling NBC News the gunmen have been identified as 18-year-old Caleb Vasquez and 17-year-old Kane Clark. And three senior law enforcement officials tell NBC News they're trying to authenticate a document purportedly written by the suspects full of anti-Islamic and anti-Semitic views, also describing themselves as anti-Trump. Outside the car where police say they killed themselves, a bottle with a Nazi SS symbol.
They didn't discriminate on who they hated.
And at 9:40 a.m. Monday, 2 hours before the killing spree, police say Clark's mother called police to report her suicidal son had run away, taking his parents' weapons and car. Police started a search, including at a mall and school, when 2 hours later, the first reports of gunfire at the mosque. And then that second shooting scene. Just blocks away, branches still on the ground after police say the gunman opened fire on a landscaper. One bullet grazing off his helmet, another embedded right here in this very home. And we're learning more about the victims: Amin Abdullah, Mansour Kaziha, and Nader Awad. Police say Abdullah opened fire on the suspects, and all three heroically distracted the gunman away from the mosque before police arrived.
I truly believe that that's what saved the 140 kids that were just inside.
We spoke to Imam Taha Hussein, who said Abdullah also sent a critical warning. Even in the middle of a gunfight, he grabbed his radio and said what?
He sent a message and notification to all the teachers and the staff inside the building that there is an active shooter inside the building. At the last moment of his life, he thought about saving the lives of the kids and everyone inside this building.
And in addition to recovering the more than 30 firearms and that crossbow, authorities say that they believe these two teen suspects met online where they were later radicalized. And upon realizing that both lived in San Diego, they began meeting in person. And right now, investigators are doing deep dives into their electronic devices. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Morgan, thank you.
A historic criminal trial is officially underway in Virginia. The former assistant principal of Rich Neck Elementary School is facing felony child neglect charges. She's accused of not doing enough to stop a 6-year-old student from shooting his teacher back in 2023. If found guilty, she would be the first administrator ever convicted over a school shooting. NBC News senior national correspondent Stephanie Gosk has the latest.
A first-of-its-kind criminal trial, a school administrator accused of not doing enough to stop a school shooting. Ebony Parker, the former assistant principal at Rich Neck Elementary in Virginia, is facing 8 counts of felony child neglect, 1 count for each bullet in the 9mm handgun brought into her school.
I looked over, a gun was pointed right at me. He was holding a gun, the student, it was pointed right at me, and then I was shot.
Abigail Zwerner was a first-grade teacher at Rich Neck when a 6-year-old in her class brought in a gun and shot her, the bullet going through her hand and lodging 2 centimeters from her aorta. These are the chaotic moments right after the January 2023 shooting.
Zwerner was awarded $10 million in a civil trial last year, but now the stakes for Parker are even higher with this criminal trial, facing up to 40 years in prison.
In opening statements, the prosecution pointing out the danger to everyone the day of the shooting.
This case is about the 19 children whose lives were endangered in that moment, but in the moments before as well.
Parker pleaded not guilty to the charges, and her defense team is laying a lot of the blame on Zwerner.
Who was the person that saw these events from beginning to end? That was the teacher, Ms. Zwerner.
But according to the grand jury report, Parker ignored 4 warnings of a potentially dangerous threat.
I went to Dr. Parker and I told her that 2 girls came to me and said that JT had a gun in the bag.
Less than 2 hours later, according to the grand jury, the first grader shot his teacher. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
For more on this trial, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savallo. So, Danny, this should be a quick one, only expected to last, about 3 days, and there's no real legal precedent for something like this. So, first of all, walk us through the charge here, the felony child neglect, and what is it prosecutors have to argue to try and get a conviction here?
Virginia's child neglect law targets both acts and omissions, and that word omissions is doing all the heavy lifting here. The allegations are that by doing nothing after allegedly receiving information that there was a firearm on the premises, she committed neglect by her omission, by not doing what she should have done and what she was duty-bound to do. That's the prosecution's theory.
What are you going to be looking for as this case unfolds?
I'm looking for mens rea. We already saw a little preview of it in the package. And what you're looking for is this kind of chain of command issue. What the defense is going to try and do is say, sure, even if you say that the defendant did nothing, look around. Other people, look at their reactions. How did they react to these reports of a potential firearm? And is there somebody else in the chain of command who bears more responsibility, including, and this is a delicate thing to say, but Zwerner herself? What was her reaction? Was it raise the alarm immediately, or was it sort of, well, let me wait and see? Because there is a human instinct to sort of freeze up when you get some sort of in a crisis situation. And that was that what was happening here, or is this actionable criminal neglect?
All right, Danny Zavalos, good to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Well, another line of severe storms swept through the central and southern parts of the country overnight. In central Michigan, strong winds ripped the roof off of this preschool. The teachers there rushed the young kids into a shelter to keep them safe, and luckily no one was injured. And in Minnesota, the governor is calling in the National Guard to help contain an outbreak of wildfires burning across the state. That fire threat is also out west in California, where red flag warnings remain in place today because of high temperatures and gusty winds.
Let's get a look now at what to expect as those storms and the severe heat continue to impact so much of the country with your Morning News Now weather.
Al Roker is with us again today with the latest. Hey, Al, good morning.
Well, good morning. We are looking at a low pressure system pushing its way to the south. Gusty storms along this front, though, tracking into the northeast. We've got an elevated risk for parts of southern Texas. More heavy rain tomorrow. Those showers and storms really start firing up in the plains. We could be looking at some isolated flooding, especially central and southern Texas, into the Gulf and parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley. The heat continues. Records today from Bangor, Maine, all the way down to Blacksburg, Virginia. We're looking at temperatures way above normal. Could see records in Bangor, Boston, down to Balmer and Raleigh, North Carolina. Record 96. We could hit that. Then that front pushes through. It's a heat buster, dropping those temperatures by tomorrow. Boston, you're at 66. Same in Detroit. St. Louis dropping down to 72 degrees. And you can see over the next few days, as we go into Memorial Day weekend, temperatures warm up in Chicago, Nashville as well, New York City. We stay, though, in the 60s, and it's going to be a wet Memorial Day weekend, unfortunately. Your holiday travel impacts for Friday. East Coast, periods of rain, the I-40, I-64, I-77 all looking a little rough. Airport delays from Nashville to Houston due to heavier showers and thunderstorms, but we'll probably see some off and on delays everywhere else. Saturday looking pretty good, although unfortunately weather up and down the East Coast is a mess. Sunday, more rain, especially down in the lower Mississippi River Valley. Sunny and hot out west. And then Monday, big travel day. East Coast, another rainy one, especially as you get down toward the Gulf. I-35, I-20, I-10 going to all be problems. That drenching rain will continue. And as far as the airports, some delays, probably more due to volume than anything else. Boston, New York, D.C. But as you get down into the Gulf, New Orleans and Houston, all looking at possible weather-related delays. And that is your latest weather.
All right, Al, thank you so much. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, a show of unity overseas. Chinese President Xi Jinping meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin just days after that historic summit with President Trump. We're going to have the latest from Beijing.
Up first, though, mounting concerns over that hantavirus outbreak linked to a cruise ship. The new quarantine rules for American passengers. We'll be right back.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.